The only thing that we could do is we could infer from their statements. When we say violent extremism, and one example of violent extremism is political or religious extremism that they are exposing. Actually, it is both a social ill as well as symptoms of a social ill. Violent extremism is a social ill or illness in the sense that it is a product of exclusivism. It is a product of a certain frame of mind which is, we can say, intolerant. In that case, violent extremism or religious extremism is a kind of social illness. So their message is that of intolerance. When we say religious intolerance, it is like this. The only truth is with me. All your thinking are wrong. So since all of you are wrong, you are bound to the hellfire. Okay? Either you go to the hellfire or listen to my message. That is one strand. The second strand is that religious extremism is just a symptom of other social illnesses. Ano yung mga social illnesses? Yung mga usual na alam natin. Human rights violations, economic disenfranchisement, historical injustices, poverty, and illiteracy, and many others. Given the existence of these social illnesses, they ban on those. Meaning they would say that what we want to do is to establish a khilafah that will put an end to all these evils. We will establish a system which is contrary to the existing system of Western modernity, wherein all those social illnesses that you can see in moral decadence, poverty, stagnancy, and corruption, and so many others would be absent. So they ban on that. So to summarize again, their message would be explained through this. Their message as an indication of the social illness, and the second one is they also ban on the existence of social illnesses that we have. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Now it's clear to all of us what we are really talking about. So, do you have questions? Questions? Yes, please. Please state your name and from what college, from what college you come from.
So good morning po, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. I am Sahara S. Madam, the College of Education Governor. My question po, sir, is that dito po lang po sa Pilipinas ay hindi na naiiwasan yung discrimination between religion. Dahil kapag sinabing Muslim ka, talagang terrorist ka kasi nilalahat po. Kasi dito sa labas po lang po kasi ng bansa ang na-observe po kapag mga Iran or Syria or mga Muslim countries po, nananahimik po yung bansa. Like, hindi po nila sineshout out po sa social media. So, parang nararamdaman ko po, pati po ba yung human rights ay unfair at biased? Kung tayo pa lang as student leaders, ay maliit lang po yung boses na kaya namin ibigay. Magbuboost lang po kami sa mga tao. Pero kung talagang yung matataas po sa amin, katulad na lamang po ng human rights, ay hindi po sila gumagawa ng paraan. Kung yun po yung interpretation namin, how much more po kaming mga student leaders po? Yun lang po yung question ko po. Thank you po.
Okay, thank you so much for that question. I think when you say human rights, you are referring to certain human rights agencies or or institutions, especially here in the Philippines. I feel very much your question. It is a question of discrimination in terms of religious affiliations. There are certain things that we could do, or I could say pieces of advice. One is that let ourselves be the mirrors, true mirrors of our religion. So this is an individual obligation. The second one is that usually the conflict arises when everyone does not truly represent his her own religion. Napakarami sa atin na ignorante hindi sa ibang religion kundi sa mismo ating religion. For example, sa mga Muslims, you can cite so many, right? For my Christian friends and fellow students, for example, I would ask about certain chapters of the New Testament, especially particularly Old Testament, they would not know. So it means to say we are not well familiar with our own holy scriptures. So that is the second one. The third one has something to do with how we would be able to voice our views. Let us not wait for others to interpret us. Let us not wait for others to tell our stories. Of course, our stories are both sad and happy stories, but the important one is that we present our own stories. So in the interest of time, I will just stick on these three. But for certain clarifications, you can contact me, and then through online, we could continue the conversation.
From this group? Okay. So, apart from Dr. Limba, maybe you would like to ask some questions, some clarifications from the presentation of Mr. Derridean. So, okay. From this side of the room, question. Okay. Shai. Any question of the students? What is no right or wrong question? English na lang.
Begin na.
I am Delphi Warata. I am with Notre Dame University. I understand that this forum's concern is to look at ways and things on how we can prevent violent extremism in campuses. In both your presentations, si Dr. Limba and then si Sir Marcos, it appears that you have presented photos of our historical experiences very much related to our experiences on violence. And si Sir Limba looked at the text, you know, that we have to be very careful when we analyze text because all our ideas are coming from words, the importance of the use of words. Now, given your experiences, your talks from different places in Mindanao, what are the specific actions, strategies that these student leaders can do in order for them, for us, to be more conscious and be contributory to the building of a more peaceful community, rather than focusing on becoming more aware of what or are those violent experiences, but then stopping there and not moving on what we can do. So the question is, what can we do? What words should we often utter from your experiences? Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you so much for the heavyweight question. Actually, it's actually the gist of the program, the way I see it. First point, on preventing and countering. The month of March is, among other things, the Blank Prevention Month. Okay. What's the answer? Month of March is Fire Prevention Month. Yung mga bumbero, punta sa mga school, and then magpaalaala ng mga fire prevention ng mga tips sa bahay, yung safety tips. Sa time na nasusunod, kinakailangan pa ba yung lectures? Hindi. Yung mga bumbero mismo, may dala-dalang mga gamit, they will go to the place. That's why what we are doing are both. Preventing when there is no fire yet, and countering when there is already fire. And the reality on the ground is that we are on the two stages. We are in the countering because one city has already been burned. One city has already been burned in 2017. Preventing because others are not yet burning, and we hope no more burning. The second point is that this advocacy, which is preventing and countering violent extremism, is not just an all-state approach, meaning it's not only the responsibility of the NGOs and the government agencies. Rather, this advocacy is actually, the correct approach is all-nation approach. Each of us has his or her own role to play. Let me cite an example. So many radicalized young individuals, they were not radicalized in the mosque or in the church or in public places. Rather, saan sila radicalized? They were radicalized inside their bedrooms. Inside their bedrooms, dahil meron silang kaharap na monster called PC, and then itong monster nito connected to the entire world and receiving what? YouTube preachers. The messages of YouTube preachers. So they are radicalized. When an individual who is inside the comfort of his bedroom is being radicalized, could the police and military monitor him or her? No. If ever there is somebody that could monitor him, it is no other than his or her mother. Yung kanyang mother ang makamonitor, because mother knows best. Ano yung nakikita ng bata, kahit hindi nakikita, alam niya. So in your case, what you could do as students, you could do your duty by this duty I could summarize into two. One is educating yourself. And educating yourself is not just receiving data or information. There is a more important element that should be added with the the reception or the receiving of the data. And what is that important element? Sir Marcos implicitly mentioned about this, and that is critical thinking. Critical thinking. If you receive an information, mental process muna. Sa halip na, i-like, and then automatically share, and then mag-comment. Isip-isip muna before any other action. No problem, you receive information because we are now in the age of information overload. Sa time namin, ganitong piece of information, we have to exert much effort. Sa inyo is the whole table of information. For us, our problem was to get information, in your case, how to categorize those informations. So, the answer for that is that education. When we say education, it has two elements. That is the receiving of information, no problem. You receive information, all pieces of knowledge could be potentially useful. But the more important thing is to use your critical mind. And I am sure you are all critically minded, provided we will exercise it. We will exercise critical thinking. Thank you.
Dito, oh.
Okay, so good morning, sirs. Ang i-ask ko lang po is, di ba nakakanda kayo na... Okay, so my name is Hannah Taraganan, Assistant President of Senior High School. Okay, so i-ask ko lang po if, di ba nagkakanda kayo ng seminars sa universities lang?
My question is regarding the it's under political studies. So, is there any possibility that the political bodies, or let's say the government itself, has a connection sa terrorism? In fact, the government itself addressing or channeling this terrorism through sending armed forces to the Philippines. But is there any possibility na itong mga politicians na ito or other government is may connection din ba in tolerating terrorism? And another thing po is, what is the root cause of terrorism din po?
Okay, thank you, Sir Marcos. Let me address the second part of the question, causes or roots of terrorism. Let me deal with that question by saying like this. There are drivers and enablers of terrorism. Pwede mong sabihin na yun na yung mga roots mo. When we say drivers, they are the factors that actually drive a person toward a particular violent extremist group. Enablers are factors that make those groups stronger. Okay? So, usually, ang alam natin is yung drivers. Ano yung nagda-drive ng tao? For example, one of those fighters, young fighters engaged in Marawi, they were educated international school in Saudi Arabia. They belong to a prominent family in Marawi. After high school, they returned back to the Philippines to study in a Catholic-run school also, a prestigious one, also in Mindanao. And they participated there. Two brothers. What could be the factor? Is it poverty? As the common narrative is not, because of a certain conviction that along the way they were able to learn. through their peers or through the online engagement. There's somebody, a son of a medical doctor here in Cotabato City. Also, he studied here in Cotabato City. He participated there. It means to say, this young guy is a what? This young guy is somebody that belongs to a middle class family. Is it poverty? No. Certain things. Other persons, they would join because of their friends. They were recruited by their friends. Others would join. Why? Because a certain group would give them money and they are poor and then they would go. Another person would go because the military, 10 years ago, his father was killed by the military, and since there is a poor justice system in our country, so he said that I would revenge for the death of my father. So that is another factor. All these are drivers. There are also enablers of terrorism. Enablers, again, sasabihin ko, yung nagpapa-strong sa kanila. Ano yung examples? Corruption on the different levels of our society. From janitor to the highest person or the highest echelon of the government. Sa military, sa police, bakit meron kidnapping na ganito, and then sa ransom included ang police at saka military. Sulu, Basilan are replete with those instances. Corruption is one enabler. So, in the interest of time again, I think I have to stop on that. Thank you.